Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great? Good. Just a friendly reminder that the Redneck Preppy can also be found on Rumble and Odyssey. Links are in the description below. Well, if this all seems a little familiar, I don't blame you. Back in May of last year, I reviewed a 15-round magazine for the CZ457 that was released by Canadian company NDr Shooting Supplies, located in lovely Quebec. In fact, here is that very magazine. Well, back in November, I wanted to order a few more of them, but they were unavailable. Surprising for a product that I took to be popular. Well, the mystery was soon solved when NDr announced that they were releasing a Gen 2 of the magazine at the end of February 2025. I got mine a few weeks back, and I've been putting it through its paces to see if they screwed up a good thing. At any rate, let's tear into this and see what's up. Virtually nothing has changed about the packaging, so the unboxing experience is the same as the one that you saw in my review of the Generation 1 magazine. You still get a magazine, which is of course rather helpful. You get yourself an NDr sticker for those of you who crave these sorts of things, and the product card. Now I should say that the back of the product card is a little bit different in that it informs you it is a second generation magazine, and among the changes of the redesigned magazine, it no longer requires modifications to the factory trigger guard, inlet, and is compatible with all stocks and chassis and extended magazine releases in order to use this magazine. Now, as I use a Gen 1 magazine, I already modified my extended magazine release for the magazine to work, and I run an MDT chassis, so none of these new changes really apply to me. For others, though, who were leery about modifying their rifle and didn't buy the Gen 1 magazine, well, yay to you now. And the magazine is still compatible with the CZ family of rifles that includes the 452, 453, 455, 457, and 512, and it also works with the Lithgow LA101, so our Australian brothers and sisters are covered. It still holds 15 rounds. It's still manufactured out of T6061 T6 aluminum with a Type 2 anodizing finish. I have to say that I use the Gen 1 on a weekly basis. Why, here it is. And I've had no issues with either the construction or the finish over the last 10 months. It is still made in Canada, and it is still missing something that I'll mention later in this review. Let's physically compare the Gen 2 to Gen 1 and see the differences. Given that NDr is touting the Gen 2 magazine's ability to work with virtually every CZ457 setup, it probably shouldn't surprise you to learn that the major change is in the form of the magazine. Comparing to Gen 1, you've got this obvious cutaway at the bottom of the magazine, which you don't see on the Gen 1. Outside of that obvious difference, the others are a little subtle at first glance. Let's just line these up so that they're roughly the same. The first thing you'll notice in the Gen 1 magazine is on the bottom, that protuberance that was at the bottom of the Gen 1 magazine is no longer there. The Gen 2 magazine kind of has an optical illusion where it looks shorter than the Gen 1, and the Gen 1 is now at the top. In reality, they're both actually the same length. The Gen 2, however, does extend a little bit further at the front of the magazine. And that's really basically the changes. The only other one that is notable, I guess if you want to call it that, is the screw pattern on the magazines. They seem to have mirrored them on the Gen 2. Same number of screws though, 4 on each. So there you go. There's your difference between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. Basically the same, other than some minor aesthetic differences which allow it to work with
all chassis and rifles.
The Gen 2 works just as well as the Gen 1. It feeds reliably. I certainly had no issues with the few different types of .22 long rifle I tried, and it's just as easy to load as the earlier generation was. Now, just to go over the pros and cons quickly, since they really haven't changed since the Gen 1. Cons first. Price is still a thing. They cost $74 in mega dollars, or $90 in near useless Trudeau tokens. They still have screws holding the magazine body together, so you probably aren't doing in-the-field maintenance on them. And that thing I mentioned earlier that was missing, still no witness holes. I don't know why NDr didn't take advantage of the retooling for this new magazine body to put some in, but they didn't. Positives, they're reliable, they're well made. With the change to the Gen 2, they now work in pretty much every .22 long rifle CZ setup, and they're easy to load. They ideally do what magazines should do, not be thought of, and simply do their job. So do I recommend the Gen 2? Well, a simple yes. Not to sound too repetitive from my Gen 1 review, competition shooters will likely be interested in this. Magazine extenders typically only give you an extra 2 rounds on a 10-round magazine, whereas this gives you 15 rounds out of the box, or, well, bag in this case. For casual shooters, though, this magazine might be more of a want item. 10-round polymer magazines are pretty cheap and do the job very capably. At the end of the day, it's your money. Should you replace your Gen 1 with Gen 2s? No, there is no reason. In functioning, they work exactly the same, and I assume if you're running a rifle that needed minor modification to work with Gen 1 magazines, you've already done so. So there's no reason to buy new magazines. So if the Gen 2 fits in your use case, or you don't mind spending some money, I think the Gen 2 is a fine magazine. There is a non-affiliate link in the description to the company's Canadian and American websites if you're interested in picking one up or want to look over their other magazines. At any rate, I hope you found today's video at least be vaguely entertaining and mildly informative. As always, I hope your trips to the range are always a blast. Take care, and bye-bye.